Hello and welcome back to Overseas Auto Reviews. Today I am back at your favorite Mercedes-Benz of Seattle to review this rather controversial, especially in design, Mercedes-Benz EQE350. And without further ado, let's break this vehicle down and complete a review. Now, it's very important to address the elephant in the room, the design of this vehicle. It's rather bulbous and, in my opinion, not the best looking. Now, this isn't Mercedes' hit at BMW for making rather unattractive looking cars at the M3 and M4. That's a joke, please don't hate me for that. But this is an electric vehicle hosting a 90.6 kilowatt hour battery, meaning that it needs to have the least amount of drag or wind resistance possible to give it the most amount of range. And in order to do that, Mercedes has shaped this in a way so that the coefficient of drag is 0.243, meaning that this thing slices through the air better than a Model S, which is, quite frankly, the closest thing you could compare this to in size. I wouldn't go as a Model 3 because even though there is a EQS, the size of this is more comparable to the Model S, even though the luxury and price point of the EQS is more comparable to the Model S. But that's something for some time else. This is what's more important now. The design is not because of Mercedes' design language, but because of performance. Now let's get into the front. This is different from Mercedes because there's no design in the hood, and that again leads to the coefficient of drag. There's only two shaped lines that run into the A-pillars, but that's all. You get the standard Mercedes badge up front and in the hood, but this is all great. This is going to host your radar cruise control if you get that option. You do have no design on the front grille because there is an AMG variant of the EQS, the EQS53. It's going to have a larger battery, better performance, but that's going to have the Panama O'Connor grille built into it. You also have the new Mercedes-Benz digital light, which in my opinion looks really good. Very nice design in here with a bunch of triangles. And in my opinion, when these lights turn on, they look really great. These are also adaptive, so based on steering input, you're going to get better illumination. Speaking of steering input based, you have the camera for the front end right over here. And when you turn your wheel in tight spaces, the camera adjusts its angle based on where your wheels are pointing, which is really helpful in tight situations. You have your tow latch right over here. Hopefully you'll never need that. And then on the lower portion, you do have grille inserts, and these feed into the aerodynamics of the vehicle, giving you better control and then again, better range as well. Maybe there is a little bit of cooling that leaks into the battery, which is hosted under here. This vehicle does not have a frunk because the electric motor and the battery are in this relative area. But for a front-end design on Mercedes-Benz's first electric vehicle, after the EQS of course, it's really not that bad, and in my personal opinion, it looks better in person than it does on camera. Now, since there's no engine bay that I can show you, let's talk power numbers and drivetrain. This is all-wheel drive with one motor in the rear and one motor in the front. You get a 90.6 kilowatt hour battery, and on AC slow charging, you're gonna get 9.6 kilowatts of charging, but on a DC fast charging port, you're gonna get 170 kilowatts of charging, which is really good. In terms of range, this will do around 330, depending on how you're driving, miles of range in one complete charge, considering the fact that you're actually driving it normally and not like a crazy person. In addition to that, this vehicle makes 288 horsepower, really low in my opinion, but 564 pound-feet of torque, which is really good. 0 to 60 happens in 6.1 seconds. Now this is where I say you should step up to the EQE500 instead of the 350 like this, because the 500 has better performance numbers. It makes around 400 horsepower, and the 0 to 60 time is around 4.8-ish seconds if I am not wrong. And in my opinion, since the price difference is not too different, it makes sense to go with the 500 instead of the 350. Let's talk about the wheels. Here we have the 20-inch 5 twin-spoke aero wheels with black accents, which is an upgrade for $850. And what that gives you is Pirelli P0 all-season tires, 255 millimeters in width all around. And in my opinion, these suit the vehicle very well. Remind me of the old EQB class, if that's similar to what it used to be called. Really interesting looking vehicle, but the design language in these wheels is really similar to those hubcaps that the electric or hybrid B class used to have. And this vehicle does not have the all-wheel steering package. meaning that the rear wheels do not turn up to 10 degrees in low speeds and 4.5 in higher speed conditions, and that is quite a pricey option, but nonetheless, I think it's still worth it because it does improve handling substantially. And now here we are at the side. You can see the illuminated projections coming out of the side mirrors. Speaking of the side mirrors, these do fold in with keyless go. The keys are in my pocket, vehicle locks, mirrors fold in, nice amber turn signals, but you can see the side view of the vehicle, and it's very sleek, allowing the air to pass over it, obviously, but it's not my favorite side profile on Mercedes. In fact, the GLK behind it has a better silhouette than this vehicle. Again, don't attack me, that's just my opinion. You can see the sleekness is running all the way from the front end through the A pillar, B pillar, C pillar, and even rounds out towards the bottom at the rear. One thing that's good is that the negative offset on the wheels is still present, meaning that it does have a good stance per se. You have the EQE badging on the right. I'm surprised there's no blue stuff to indicate that it's electric. I guess Mercedes just isn't like everyone else in the segment, putting blue stuff to illuminate eco-friendly and such. The wheels, these are turned pretty much all the way. You can see that the turning angle isn't too bad. You have these disgusting American regulation reflectors on the side. You can swap those out for white European ones, but in my opinion, you don't really need to because, well, it's an electric car, and electric cars really aren't my favorite thing, but I'll try and suspend judgment for this one. The bottom here has very interesting addition. We have a chrome piece along with plastic trimming on the bottom. You have chrome inserts on the door handles. If I push the door handles here, with a little bit finicky, but once they pop out, you can see that they're illuminated and say Mercedes-Benz on them, just to signify that this is a Mercedes and not some Nissan that's been rebadged. Little acoustic horn, and in the back right there you have the charge port, which I'll open for you now. Now, just like any old gas cap, you can push it, it'll pop right open automatically. Now, this won't give you an octane minimum octane rating because, well, there's no octane in it, but it will tell you how to plug your stuff in. Here you have your regular AC. Pop this thing out, DC right there. Very nice addition, really easy to use. It's not like any other electric cars like the Porsche Taycan or the Model S. You only have to, there's no extra thing indicating what's what. I also like the fact that these are slightly illuminated, so if you are filling up in the dark, it's right there for you to see. Here we are at the rear end of the EQE 4MATIC. Now, honestly, I quite like the rear end styling on this, which is, in my opinion, slightly better than the front end. If you were driving behind this thing, I wouldn't be too, what's the word here? My acid reflux wouldn't start triggering unless I saw this in my rear view mirror. That's a different story. These taillights, in my opinion, are quite nice. They resemble the new SL in a way. I do not believe that these are sequential either. You have this new EQ font for the 4MATIC badging, which is interesting. You also have different fonts for the EQE350 badge on the left side here. One thing to note is that you have the Mercedes center cap in a chrome, but this is also your rear view camera and your trunk release. Oh, look! A BMW bag. I wonder what's in here. A nice plate for you, so your acid reflux can go on this whenever you see one of these, and it'll remind you with this nice little bag that you should have bought an M4 for the same amount of money. Now, at the bottom, one good thing about being electric is that you don't have exhaust, and no exhaust on a modern Mercedes means no fake vents. So there's a good thing with that. You also have these very bulky rear bumper covers over here, which are American regulations, etc. You also have your license plate bracket and a chrome piece which runs along the back, tail hook cover right over here, and your parking sensors along with your reflectors on the bottom. Let's get on with this trunk test, hopefully without getting my pants dirty, because this vehicle is slightly dirty. This trunk is actually enormous. Once you take a look at it, opening again a little bit small for a person to fit in here, so if you're trying to carry bodies in silence, not the best getaway vehicle. And then I will press close, and just like the C-Class, it actually detected that I was in here, so that's a really good safety feature if you are getting kidnapped. Trunk nut, nothing but some spare tire repair tools like a air pump and some extra additional equipment that helps you compress air into the tire. And then here you have the lug nut release, which is quite helpful because these vehicles have specific lug nuts that lock so that people can't steal your wheels. On the left you have a little basket cubby type thing. On the right you have a little box that gives you access to the internal components. In the back, 1, 2, 3, and 4 hooks. And looking at the trunk, this is the automatic close and lock the vehicle. And then here you have the buttons to fold both the rear seats. Like so, and that gives you full access and a lot of storage space. This definitely makes up for the fact that the vehicle does not have a front trunk. Now here we are in the rear seats of the EQE. You have this nice piano black, which is not very nice because it shows all the fingerprints that have touched it. Now I like that everything here is aluminum, and there's even ambient lighting within this door handle frame. You have the same aluminum like you did in the modern C-Class that I reviewed last. You have the Burmester 3D high-end surround system, which is a very costly option in this vehicle, but also very, very worth it. Now sitting here with this seat in my desired seating position, I have a fair amount of footroom, but a very nice knee room, as you can see, especially for something that's pretty far back. You have 2 individual climate control vents, but those do not have any control or temperature options. Here is the ambient lighting from the inside. You can also see the ambient lighting in the front, which has been extended with an additional option. You can even see that the seats right here are lined with ambient lighting. And if you listen closely, you can kind of hear this electric whir. It's quite interesting. Over there we have the kind of Pagani Huayra styled air vents. They look like the Pagani Huayra wheels, but this is a very nice and well made interior. I'll show you the front end right now. Here's something I liked a lot, and that is to do with the dynamic control setting. Listen really closely. Right, here we are in the interior, and one thing I did want to note is that this gray leather is actually not the highest quality. It feels like vinyl. I'm unsure what this material is. It's probably just MBTEX, and you heard that startup noise. That just tells you the driver has entered the vehicle and it is ready to go. Here is a closer look at those turbine styled air vents. Nice click sound when they are in their resting position. Now this is a basic Mercedes steering wheel, not flat bottom because this is not an AMG. You have your cruise control options over here. This left screen that controls the center screen. This has a plethora of different options for you to choose from. And I like the fact that the understated and all the other sport mode screens are different because this is an electric vehicle and it's different from what you would see in a gas-powered Mercedes, especially even when looking at the center display, because this is different from the S-Class, but it's very similar to the EQE still. Now we do have this waterfall type center display system. I've already reviewed this, but I want to show you some of the EQ options. Again, there's that nice pulse. Now if we press this right over here, after we start the system, haptic feedback, press the EQ button, if it'll let me, and then it prompts me with new things like charging stations, parking spaces, and previous destinations. Here we can press the range and you can see all of the functions. This is about 40 to 60% battery right now, and you have 137 miles of range. That's not the best. Let's see, yeah, 61% of battery right over here. And then here's the consumption graph that you have from before. Otherwise, it's really just a basic Mercedes-Benz MBUX system, which I have reviewed before. If you want an in-depth look into this, I'll link a video. Here you have the start-stop button. This does not have the auto start-stop little bottom piece on it because this doesn't really have a start-stop motor that they can turn off. In the center, you have the charging station, wireless charging, which is in the worst location possible in my opinion. 2 USB-C ports, a little storage space for your keys, 2 cup holders, and then below you have a little storage space as well. Looking onto these rear seats, you can see that they have a very nice design which flows into the rest of the interior very well. You also have the rest of the ambient lighting which wraps around quite nicely, especially on these seats. For the sunroof, this does have the panoramic sunroof, so all I have to do is go like this, or not, like that, way back, to show everything. It's important to note that only this front portion is the flap that's going to open and reveal open air. Again, regular Mercedes stuff with the rest of this head unit. Visor comes down, you can see yourself. Very nice. Now let's get on with the drive.
Riding in the EQE350 is actually quite comfortable. I like the way that the suspension is tuned with the air suspension. It really feels like you're driving on a cloud. Definitely S-Class level in terms of air suspension tuning. And then when you look at wind noise, it's actually quite a bit better as well than, say, an E-Class. And that's because of the drag coefficient most likely, and the fact that there's no engine that's creating any vibrations. I really like the way that Mercedes has designed this vehicle. Turning input is really good, steering response is also very nice, and I quite like the way this vehicle drives. The suspension is tuned perfectly, and let's get on to some acceleration clips. Very strong, but dies out towards the end because of a lack of horsepower. Here we are with the comparison, and it's a little bit difficult because of the EQE350's horsepower and its price. Now the Model S, like I said earlier, is to be compared with an EQS because of its price and horsepower. This Model S makes around 405 horsepower and it starts at $96,990 without the autopilot feature. Now, the reason I'm comparing it to a base Model S is because the EQE is too much larger than a Model 3 to be considered that, and the price is substantially higher than it is with a Model 3. Now, this is where I'd say the EQE500 compares better to this vehicle because of its horsepower, and the EQE500 would have around $10,000 less of a well-optioned spec. So in terms of a Mercedes EQE versus a Model S, I'd say your EQE is a better bet, especially considering the fact that the interior is going to be miles better. The Tesla Model S is going to have a better charging network than the EQE, but that's only a matter of time until Electrify America can come up with a solution that charges just as good as Tesla's fast charging network. Same issue as the Model S, can't really compare it to an EQE350, as the EQE350 is really a gray area. It's too expensive to be compared to, say, a Kia EV6 because it's almost double in price, but the performance specs match up relatively well. But this is more comparable to an EQS, not even an EQE500, because of the wheelbase and the interior quality as well. Also considering base price as well. Even comparing it to an EQS or EQE500, it stands up pretty well, even though the EQE500 will run you around $10,000 less. I would go with this if I was getting in a luxury vehicle that's also electric, not considering the Porsche Taycan.
And that is the complete review on the 2023 Mercedes-Benz EQE350 4MATIC. And in my opinion, it's a good vehicle for what Mercedes-Benz is starting to accomplish, and that is zero emissions to the furthest extent possible. And I mean, it's a good start. I feel with a redesign of this vehicle, again, this is the first generation of the EQE, EQS, and all the other EQ models that are completely electric. And I'm sure Mercedes-Benz is going to do something about this design because a lot of people, including myself, have been complaining about it. Now, if we disregard the design of the vehicle, it's actually quite well made. All the panels feel very sturdy. There's no creaking like older Mercedes-Benz generations, like the W212, 213 generations that creak when you touch some panels. The only fault I saw in this vehicle is the fact that it's underpowered, and that's why you should get an EQE500 if you're in this $84,000 price range, like this vehicle sits right over here. Now, if you did have a little bit more money, you could step up to the EQS, which has even better finishings. And there is also an AMG variant of this vehicle, which is also worth the buy. It's more competitive with the Tesla Model S and even the Lucid Air in the base model, if you look at it, the one with 400 to 500 horsepower. In my verdict, this is not a bad vehicle. If you want a Mercedes and you want something that's electric, definitely worth taking a look at one of these. Thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to subscribe and keep on driving.